take a breath with me for a moment. Before we even begin, I want you to notice something. Notice how you found yourself here today, whether you searched for this reading, whether it came up unexpectedly in your feed, whether something quiet and unnamed inside you just needed to understand what's been happening. That pull you're feeling? That restlessness, that wondering, that almost embarrassing loop of thoughts you keep returning to, it's not one-sided. I need you to hear that before we go any further. Because what I'm already sensing as I settle into this energy is that somewhere, someone is sitting with something they cannot put down. And that something is you. Let me paint you a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. You know that feeling when you've had a conversation with someone, maybe it ended perfectly normally, maybe it ended strangely, maybe it didn't really end at all, and for days afterward you find yourself replaying it? Not because you're obsessing, but because something about the interaction left a residue. Like a song that keeps surfacing in your mind even though you haven't played it. You weren't trying to hold on to it. It just stayed. Now imagine being the person on the other side of that. Imagine being the one who walks away from that conversation, or from a moment shared with you, and feels that exact residue. That stickiness. That inexplicable pullback towards someone they maybe don't fully understand yet, someone who unsettles them in the most fascinating way. That is who I'm picking up on right now, for those of you this reading is meant for. And I want you to understand something before we go deeper. This isn't just about romantic longing. This is about something far more complex. Something that lives in the space between attraction and recognition. Between wanting someone and being almost disturbed by how much you want them. This is interesting, because the energy here isn't desperate. It isn't frantic. It's almost reverent. The first thing I'm sensing around this person, and remember, this is a collective reading, so take what resonates and leave what doesn't, is that they are experiencing something they did not prepare for. They thought they understood the nature of your connection. They may have even tried to categorize it, to file it neatly into a box they already had. This is a friend, this is someone I find attractive, this is someone I work with, this is someone I used to know. But the box keeps not fitting. Because you don't fit. And I mean that in the most powerful way possible. There's a quality to you, and I don't know if you're fully aware of this, that mirrors people back to themselves. Not in a calculated way. Not because you're trying to be profound or mysterious. But simply because the way you exist in relation to others has a clarity to it. When you see someone, you actually see them. When you listen, you actually hear them. And for someone who has spent a long time feeling unseen, unheard, misunderstood in their connections, stumbling into you is almost disorienting. It's like looking into a pond that's completely still and finally seeing your own reflection clearly for the first time in years. Does this feel familiar? Have you been told, perhaps more than once, that being around you feels different? That people feel comfortable with you quickly, or that conversations with you go deeper than expected? This is part of what creates this pull. You're not doing anything supernatural. You're doing something actually quite rare. You're present. Genuinely present. And in a world full of distracted, half-present connections, that is magnetic. But here's where it gets layered. Here's where there's more depth than it first appears. This person isn't just attracted to you. They are recognizing something in you. And recognition, true recognition, is one of the most destabilizing emotional experiences a human being can have. Because when someone recognizes you at a soul level, when they feel that inexplicable sense of I know you, it bypasses all the usual defenses. The walls they built after past disappointments, the careful control they've learned to maintain in relationships, the way they've trained themselves not to want too much, all of that gets quietly dismantled, not by anything you did deliberately, but simply by the fact of your presence. I'm hearing something like, they remind me of something I forgot I was looking for. Sit with that for a second. This person may not even be able to articulate what it is about you. If you ask them to explain the attraction, they might struggle. Because it isn't simply that you're beautiful or successful or interesting, though you may be all of those things. It's something more essential. Something that operates beneath the surface of logic and language. And because they can't explain it, they keep returning to it, mentally, emotionally, sometimes in their dreams, trying to understand what it is you stirred up in them. Now, I want to gently name something, because I think this is important for those of you watching. Some of you have been in a season of quietly doubting yourself. Maybe in the context of this connection specifically. Maybe more broadly. You've been wondering if you misread things. If you imagined an intensity that wasn't real. If you were foolish for feeling what you felt, or for believing there was something mutual in this dynamic. You're not imagining this energy. What I'm sensing is genuinely two-sided, even if it hasn't been expressed that way. Even if this person has been quiet. Even if they've pulled back. Even if there's been distance or confusion or a silence you couldn't interpret. The internal experience on their end is not quiet at all. If anything, it's loud. It's been louder than they're comfortable with. There's a particular quality to what they feel for you that I'd describe as almost musical. Like a frequency. You know how certain songs affect you in a way that other songs simply don't, not necessarily because they're objectively better, but because something about them vibrates at exactly the right level to reach something inside you that other music doesn't touch? That is what connection with you feels like to them. And the thing about a frequency like that is that once you've heard it, silence isn't really silence anymore. It's the absence of that sound. And absence, in that case, is its own kind of presence. They think about you when things are quiet. When they're driving. When they're trying to fall asleep and the noise of the day fades. You surface. Not as an intrusive thought, not as an obsession, just as a quiet returning. Like a song they can't stop hearing. This is interesting, the energy shifts slightly here. At first this felt like simple longing, like straightforward attraction. But now it feels more like internal conflict. Because this person isn't just missing you or wanting you. They are sitting with something they haven't said yet. There is an unspoken dimension to this connection that is almost palpable from where I'm sitting. Something that has been circling, hovering at the edge of expression, never quite landing. Maybe there was a moment when they almost said it. When the words were right there, and then something, fear, timing, pride, uncertainty about how you'd receive it, caused them to pull back. To redirect. To say something lighter than what they meant. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and sensed that what was actually being said was entirely different from what was being communicated? That the real conversation was happening in the pauses, in the way their voice changed, in the way they looked at you for just a moment too long before looking away? That's the texture of what's happening here. What they haven't said, what they may not have even fully formed into words in their own mind yet, is something in the territory of, what you are to me is not simple, and it scares me how much I feel it. For some of you watching, this might be a person who has been burned before. Who gave something enormous in a past connection and did not have it honored. Who decided, consciously or not, to be more careful now. To move more slowly. To not lead with their whole heart until they were certain. And certainty, when you're that guarded, is a very high bar to reach. But here's what's also true, people who are that careful with their hearts do not give their attention freely. They do not lose sleep over people who don't matter. They do not replay conversations with people who are just casually in their orbit. The fact that you are occupying this kind of space in their inner world is itself a form of confession, even if the words haven't come. I want to pause here and check in with those of you who are receiving this reading, because the energy in a collective can be quite broad. Some of you are in active connection with this person. Some of you have experienced a period of separation or distance. Some of you are in a situation that's harder to label, a connection that exists in a kind of unresolved, between spaces territory where nothing has been officially defined. Whatever your specific situation, I want you to know that what I'm describing applies across these different contexts, because the internal experience of this person, the way they feel about you, carries the same quality regardless of what's happening externally. And one of the things I keep coming back to is the word investment. This person has invested in you, in the idea of you, in their connection with you, in their private experience of what you mean to them, in a way that they perhaps don't invest in most people. Emotional investment isn't something that's distributed equally across all relationships. Most of us have a kind of inner economy. We allocate our care, our attention, our vulnerability according to who we trust with it, who we feel it's safe to spend it on. And when someone spends that capital heavily on one person, it's because something in them has registered that person as worth it. You are worth it to them. Not theoretically. Not as a vague sense of potential. But concretely, actively, in the way they carry you with them without even deciding to. Think about that for a moment. They didn't choose to think about you this much. That's the thing people don't quite understand about deep attraction. It doesn't ask permission. It simply occurs. And then the mind, which likes to be in control, tries to manage it. Tries to rationalize it. Tries to stay casual, stay cool, not make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. But underneath all that management is the truth, something in them has claimed you as significant. And that doesn't undo itself quietly or easily. Now, and I say this gently, because I think this is part of what some of you need to hear, there is also a theme of timing running through this energy. And I know that timing is not always a comfortable thing to sit with. Especially when you're in a place of longing. Especially when you've been waiting, in whatever way waiting has looked for you. But what I'm sensing isn't that timing is conspiring against this connection. It's more that timing is developing the conditions for it. You know how certain things ripen? How fruit that's picked too early is technically the right fruit, but the taste isn't there yet, the sweetness hasn't come in, the texture isn't right, and eating it that early means missing what it was always capable of being. That's the analogy I keep coming back to with this energy. There is something here that is becoming more itself through this period of waiting. Growing into its fullness. Gathering the weight it needs to become real in the way it deserves to be real. I'm not telling you to be passive. I'm not telling you the universe will deliver this to you if you simply sit and wait. What I'm saying is that within the texture of what's unfolding, this period, however it's felt, however uncomfortable or ambiguous it's been, has not been wasted time. Something has been building. In them, yes. But also in you. Because here's what I've observed in this reading, you're not simply someone who is being thought about. You're someone who has done their own interior work. Who has arrived at a place of genuine self-possession that radiates outward. And that is not a small thing. That is actually the source of the magnetism we've been talking about this whole reading. People are addicted, and I use that word intentionally, because it's the right word for the quality of this pull, not to who you pretend to be, not to a performance or a facade, but to the specific frequency of who you actually are when you're most yourself. When you're not trying. When you're just existing as yourself. That is a rare thing to offer someone. Most of us are curating constantly. Most of us in relationships, in social spaces, in connection with others, are managing our presentation to some degree. You may do that too. I'm not suggesting you walk through the world without any awareness of how you're perceived. But there is something genuinely unguarded about your core energy that reaches people, and that unguardedness is what they return to. It's what they're addicted to. Think about the people in your life who are completely, unapologetically themselves, not aggressively, not obnoxiously, just themselves. Don't you want to be around them? Doesn't their certainty about who they are make you feel, somehow, more permission to be who you are? That's what you do for this person. whether they've told you or not. There's something else here, something I almost missed because it's subtle, but it feels important. This person sees something in you that they're still developing in themselves. It's one of the reasons the connection feels so activating to them, and I mean that almost in a literal sense, like something in them gets switched on in your presence. What you have already become, what you have already walked through, what you have already chosen for yourself, there's an aspect of that which speaks to something they are in the process of choosing. And watching you, being around you, thinking about you, functions almost like a mirror showing them who they could be if they trusted themselves the way you trust yourself. Does this resonate? Have you noticed that being around this person sometimes feels like you're giving them something beyond the ordinary? Like the conversation goes somewhere neither of you expected, and you walk away sensing that something in them has shifted slightly? That's real. That's not your imagination inflating the significance of the interaction. That's the actual dynamic. I want to offer something for those of you who have been holding this connection in a kind of suspended uncertainty, not knowing where you stand, not knowing if what you've felt is real or projected or returned. The word that keeps coming to me is recognition. Mutual recognition. The kind that doesn't necessarily arrive with fireworks or declarations, but with a quiet, deep, undeniable knowing. You know you. They know you, perhaps even more than they've let on. And somewhere in you, you've always sensed that this connection carried more weight than the surface suggested. Trust that knowing. Not to mean that everything will unfold on the timeline you've hoped for, or in the shape you've imagined it. But trust it as information. Trust it as orientation. Trust it as confirmation that what you've sensed is not the product of a heart that's too hopeful or a mind that's too imaginative. Your intuition, in this case, is accurate. I'm hearing something like, tell them not to shrink while they wait. This feels really important for some of you. Because one of the things that can happen when we're in a season of uncertainty, when we're waiting for a connection to clarify itself, when we're not sure if someone will step forward, when we're unsure how to hold our own wanting, is that we start to shrink. We make ourselves smaller. We dim a little. We second-guess the fullness of who we are because we're afraid that maybe our fullness is what's keeping this person at a slight distance, or overwhelming them, or making them uncertain. Please hear me when I say, do not shrink. Your fullness is not the problem. Your fullness is the point. It is, as I said earlier, precisely what this person cannot stop thinking about. The version of you that would shrink yourself in hopes of making the connection easier would be giving them less of what they're addicted to, not more. Stay in your fullness. Stay in your richness. Keep becoming more of who you are, not less. As I come to the close of this reading, I want to leave you with something that sits beneath all the energy we've explored today. There is a kind of love, and again, I use that word broadly, not necessarily romantically, that announces itself slowly. That doesn't arrive in a rush of certainty, but in a gradual accumulation of undeniable evidence. The kind that builds through ordinary moments that somehow keep landing differently than ordinary moments do. Through conversations that mean more than they should. Through silences that feel more full than empty. Through the simple fact of someone returning, again and again, to a thought of you they didn't go looking for. That kind of love is patient not because it's weak, but because it's substantive. Because it has real weight and real content, and real things don't always move quickly. They move with the intention of lasting. Whatever chapter this connection is currently in, beginning, middle, paused, uncertain, slowly resuming, the depth of what's there hasn't changed. The quality of what this person carries for you hasn't diminished. And neither has yours for them, if you're honest with yourself in the quiet. You are not forgotten. You are not just a passing thought. You are, for this person, the kind of presence that reshapes the interior of someone's life in ways they're still discovering. Carry yourself accordingly. Be well. Trust the timing. And don't you dare shrink.